Yo guys, welcome back, and today we have another week of box office, so let's get into it. Up first, we have & Juliet. 93% last week, and 771k to 95% and 840k. Now obviously, & Juliet has had a bit of a struggle in the past couple of weeks, as we have noted in these weekly videos, but I think it is headed in the correct direction. From January to around early May, they were doing pretty good, and then like most musicals in May that are older, it had a bit of a fall. And then it obviously didn't have the most amazing summer. It did $1 million a couple weeks, but it was low millions. And then it was starting to go into the sevens, and I think it did one week of 6. But it's done well enough this year that I do think it will make it to 2026 and this time next year. And then we have Vista Social Club. 96% last week, 98% this week, 1,012,485 to 1,139,590. Cabaret at the Kit Kat Club, 67% to 68%, and 472k to 505k. I don't know how this is still open, because of how expensive it is to put on the weekly operating costs. It's like, I believe, somewhere around like $1 million a week, I think. They might just go until October, and that would be insane if that happened, because I just don't see how that's financially responsible for them to have a show that costs $1 million to put on every single week and be doing 400k. Death Becomes Her, 99% to 97%, 1,331,563 to 1,373,906, so it's a behemoth, and has been the most successful new musical of the season, I believe, aside from maybe Happy Ending, actually, but we'll get to that in a minute. Hadestown, 98% to 99%, and 681k to 721k. Now, Hadestown has in fact had a very interesting year. It's been a pretty moderate, mediocre year, I guess you could say, in the terms of that it did, from January to April, it did mainly 7s, 8s with the occasional 9 and $1 million, and then in May it slowed down, and then it had a decent summer. I think that as long as it has a 7, 8 in front of it, it's fine. With the occasional 6, we've seen it since 2023. It's been on the ropes. We've every year I've thought it's gonna close. So I'm very surprised and happy that it's still here, because I love the show. I don't want it to close. Will it be here a year from now? I believe. Actually, I don't know. I think we're gonna have to see what the fall brings. If it can have occasional 5s, it will be here this time next year. But if it consistently is doing 5s and 6s and the occasional 7, then I will say it's gonna close. So it's a big unknown, but knowing Hadestown's past, I'm gonna say it's going to be okay, and it's going to be here a year from now. But I could be incorrect, and things could change. It's kind of a will they, won't they situation, except it's not a romantic thing. It's kind of like a show thing. It's like, will it close, will it not close? It's on the verge of closing, and then it's not on the verge of closing. It kind of oscillates all of the time, and so it's hard to pinpoint Hadestown. But what I can say is, in the past year, it has done well enough to not justify closing at the end of this year, or even at the beginning of next year. So if it does close in 2026, it won't be until like September of 26 at the earliest. Hell's Kitchen, 86% to 86%, and 848k to this week's 909k. And, you know, people were saying like, oh, Hell's Kitchen's in trouble, it's gonna close. And I never was on that train, purely because it has done so good in the past year. And it wasn't until, I believe, like 4th of July in May that it started to decline in terms of capacity and in terms of overall gross percentage. There's a difference between blips and kind of consistent patterns. And Hell's Kitchen is more of having blips than consistent patterns. Blips happen a year or two into a production's process. Normally this happens in year 2, so it is kind of concerning that the blips are happening so early on, but at the same time, this is not a pattern of consistently bad, unsustainable numbers. Just in Time sells out 1,276,340 to 1,277,574. Maybe Happy Ending had its best week yet. 102% capacity and 1,567,740 for Darren Chris's semi-last performance. He's coming back in November. Half of 2 million. I mean, we would be, I remember a year ago, we would be praying for days like these. We didn't think this was possible, but it happened. And I'm so happy that Maybe Happy Ending has managed to get to this far in the ceiling. You know, this is like blockbuster numbers, $1.5 million. Now the question becomes, how's it gonna do post Darren Criss? And if you look at the advanced sales, it's selling incredibly well. I think it might fall to like 1.3, 1.2, more kind of stable, realistic numbers, and I think it only increased from week to week to week because it was the summer. It just won the Tony, you know, and Darren was leaving. So I do think it will see lesser box office, but that doesn't mean it's still not going to be good. It's still going to be making at the minimum 1.1 million, which is still which is plenty for this show. So for any fans who might be concerned, it's going to be fine. And I do think Andrew Barth Feldman is not a name. I feel like he kind of was considered to fans of the show a draw, but like, yeah, he got a Hollywood Reporter article, and there was Hollywood articles that were highlighting it, but he's not a name. You know, you go out into the street, more people are going to know Darren than they're going to know Andrew Barth Feldman. The biggest thing he was in was the Jennifer Lawrence movie and Dear Evan Hansen as the understudy, and that's it. So he is a beloved figure in the community, but he is not, in fact, a star that's going to drive box office, in my opinion. Mulan Rouge, how this is still going on, I don't know. 97% to 94%, 990K to 994K. With the way it's gone, I think this could close at the end of the year. I still think it will. I don't see how it makes it past 2026, considering that it costs $1 million every single week, and it's not making $1 million. But maybe they're just hoping for, like, I don't know, it's weird because they have bigger names in the show and it's not doing anything. So I truly do believe that it's time to close it up. And I can't help but think that the producers are not thinking that same thing. So if you want to see it, I'd go see it now. Mincemeat, 95% to 99%, 620K to 751K. Still think it should close in February instead of extending because the last 2 months of its time is the slow months, and if they extend, then suddenly those ticket sales will decrease, and I feel like Mincemeat doesn't have a sustainable audience, and I feel like it had to pass the test of the summer, and it didn't. It kind of failed the test of the summer, because it did under 700K multiple times, even going to 500K, I believe. So Mincemeat, keep it limited engagement. 79% to 77%, and 630K to 670K. It's had a very mediocre year. January to like April, it was doing very good, and then May to August, it's done very poor. Kind of settling into the 6s and the 7s, the low 7s. I do think it will continue into next year, but I could see 2026 being 6s last year. And listen, it's recouped its investment, it's been here for many years, so if 6 does close in the next year, it's had a very successful time, and I just think the fan base is starting to dry up for it, clearly, and I think, for me, the most concerning factor is that it did this poorly in the summer. If this was in the fall, if this was in January or February, I would be like, okay, like, at least it's not the summer. But like, the summer is when musicals make the most amount of money, and Christmas and Thanksgiving. And for it to do the weakest numbers of the year in that time frame, very concerning and very telling. Stranger Things, 77% to 69%, 893K to 862K. Just close it. It's this show has failed financially. Not as like a show, because I enjoyed it, kind of, sort of, but financially, you can't help but say to yourself, wow, this was a disappointment. Great Gatsby, 81% to 83%, and 858K to 917K, and then The Outsiders sells out, and 1,050,969 to 1,198,029. So that's the video. Make sure to like, sub, comment, follow me on Instagram, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.